So I'd like to be candid and upfront with you all. If you don't already know this about me, I'm a junkie for love. And what I mean to say is I get incredibly excited when I see couples happily in love, whether it's at the doctor's office, whether it's at the beach, people walking hands. When I can see when I can see two people genuinely feeling appreciation, gratitude, affection, cherishment, respect for one another. I think that is one of the most amazing things to witness when you see this within couples. And actually, this past weekend, I had the benefit of doing a couples retreat with my beloved, and there's a picture of her and I right there. With three other couples whom we actually know them, so it's not like a group of strangers or whatnot. And in fact, everyone in the group are dear friends of mine, and these were couples who we wanted to do some intimacy exercise as well as exercises to kind of reach down to where our little kid is and to have a little play time with our partners. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Well, one of the benefits of doing couples retreats is you get to see other couples not in their environment per se, but in their romantic environment with each other. And this was roughly about a 40-hour event. And there's quite a bit of vulnerability, authenticity, and transparency. So why am I sharing this with you? Is because I got to witness couples who genuinely love each other. And during this experience, I began to process for my YouTube channel some of the thoughts I came from this experience. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to talk about what it takes to deeply fall in love in a relationship. Now, first off, of the four couples, by the way, of the four couples, all of us are divorced once at least. One couple had been married for 13 years. In fact, they were the youngest people in the group and they had been married the longest. Another couple had been together for 5 years. They met through Match.com. Another couple has been together 2 years and they're getting married next year. They met on Match.com. And then my beloved and I, although we met a year and a half ago on Match.com, we didn't actually physically meet each other until about 6 months ago. And now we live together. And all of these couples live together. What was interesting about the men in particular, one of the things I examined when the men shared about their experiences being in relationship, I noticed of all of the men, they didn't have this one quality that I think oftentimes stifles relationships for women. And if you've ever been in a relationship with a man who is overly dedicated with his work, overly dedicated with their children, overly dedicated with their friends, overly dedicated to their golf or other activities, they oftentimes treat their partners as second or third wheels in the relationship. So one thing I noticed within these men, their work or their professional life or these other things wasn't an overwhelming priority for them. They weren't, even though each man was passionate in their work, their partners were equal priorities to them. And I thought that was rather interesting to observe that what I see with a lot of my clients, that they're in relationship with men where the woman is ignored, dismissed, not treated as a priority. And oftentimes that's because they have other priorities in their life that overwhelm them and they don't make their partner equally important. So with these men, I witnessed that, I observed that, and I know this to be true for them. The other thing I noticed within these men is that all of them had the capacity to be vulnerable with their partner. More importantly, they had the capacity to actually cry in front of their partners. That's right, cry. Now, I don't mean cry from a place of insecurity. I'm talking about crying from that place of appreciation, of gratitude for their partner, to be able to lean in. And as one of the women in the group, because one of the men was being absolutely vulnerable in the moment regarding how much he genuinely appreciated and was in gratitude for his partner who he's about to marry. And he was embarrassed in that moment. And what one of the women said to him was, you shouldn't be embarrassed, because that crying is just a melting of the ice that's oftentimes surrounded by our hearts. Men oftentimes are taught to be stoic, to stuff their feelings, to keep their emotions in. And because of that, a wall of ice has been built. So the minute that wall starts to melt, that's the tears running down our eyes. And I can say every man in this group shared that type of vulnerability, authenticity, and transparency with their partner, myself included. In fact, I found myself getting choked up many a time during these processes. And what's cool about I'll be candid with you, I'm blessed to be surrounded by a group of people where we do regular retreats to improve our relationship with our partners. And there are plenty of organizations that assist that. I would certainly Google couples workshops to see what could be in your area that can actually enhance your relationship with your partner. So as I began leaning in and preparing for this particular video, I thought to myself, my girlfriend and I have been binge watching another show on Netflix called Indian Matchmaker. And why I wanted to share this with you today is what's interesting is these are people from India, and the matchmaker has a specific criteria to help match these two people together. Well, why is this so important to, examine for a moment? Is because while the matchmaker has some criteria, and the women oftentimes want tall men and successful men, doctors, and that sort of thing, what she's also matching up, more importantly, is that their values are aligned, their cultural background aligned, and more importantly, their families are aligned with one another. What's interesting in the matchmaking and the arranged marriages, it's important to have family buy-in in these relationships, because when you have your family involved in your relationship, you have a stronger support system for when the relationship hits some bumps in the road. And what's interesting is in the beginning of one of the episodes, they show all the happy couples who literally have been in arranged marriages, and they've been married 20, 30, 40, even some 50 years, and they genuinely seem happy with their partners. Now, while this could be, scripted for a TV show, I believe it to be absolutely true, because they have found partners who are aligned with them, So, but aligned more in their values, aligned in their lifestyles, and more importantly, their emotional maturity. Now, one of the challenges with dating and relationships today is we're meeting total strangers. We know little about a person. It's hard to assess whether or not they're genuinely compatible with one another. This is why I created my coaching program. By the way, there's a link. Where do you see it? Right here, there's a link. You can reach out to jonathanasley.com/coaching to schedule a discovery call with me. My whole area of expertise is to help you learn what questions you should be asking a person based on your personality to determine if you're aligned with one another. And if you haven't seen my relationship iceberg chart, I'll show it right here, okay, for the camera. You can see it above the waterline is attraction. That's where chemistry lies. Like you can see below the waterline, this compatibility is critically important. Shared values, blendable lifestyles, and more importantly, emotional maturity. And if you don't have the skills to assess someone's capacity and relationship skills to be in a relationship, it's going to be very challenging to find that partner who you can actually deeply fall in love. And quite frankly, until what I'm about to share happens, it's going to be critically difficult to have that kind of relationship. As I always say, that juicy, delicious relationship that can lead to partnership. Now, here's the thing. Emotional maturity, relationship skills, this is the challenge today that we're faced with. In fact, if you haven't seen this chart that I've created, most of you have, but some of you are new to my channel. I talk about emotional maturity and relationship skills. And while I believe 20%, by the way, this is not a fact, merely an opinion. While I believe 20% of the population has clinical issues, and while maybe 20% are healthy, the vast majority of humans have dysfunctional relationship skills. Why do we see a 50% divorce rate amongst first marriages and a 65 and 75% on second and third marriages? Because the reality is human beings don't know how to relate to one another. It used to be you had the family unit helping you stick together. But if you don't have that in your life, that's going to be critically challenging to make a relationship work. And more importantly, to make a relationship thrive where you're actually genuinely, deeply in love with one another. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating? Because I know you can listen to the idea of just leaning back in your feminine energy and just hoping that someone's magically going to claim you. Yeah, magic fairy dust works every single time for about 35 seconds. And then what are you left with? You're finding yourself ghosted or being ghosted, disappeared on, ignored, or worse, spending time in a relationship that lacks the kind of depth and emotions that you genuinely wish to experience in relationship. And sadly, many are experiencing this because they haven't done the inner work themselves to actually be prepared. In fact, one of the reasons why I wrote my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? A Journey of Personal Development, Self-Help, and Spiritual Work, is so you can actually lean into your empowerment. Because ladies, well, this isn't a dating book, by the way. Ladies, you have a propensity to give your power away to men because you've been indoctrinated in the idea that men are the leaders of the relationship. And I guess you just have to sit there and follow. This is why a lot of coaches out there right now are promoting submissive behavior for women. And quite frankly, what I've noticed is a lot of misogynistic behavior. And they're talking about the sexual marketplace, like a woman's only value is what she can provide sexually. And I'm here to say, fuck you to that shit. That's a crock of shit. That's fucking bullshit. Your value isn't based on your attraction or your capacity to clean some asshole's clothes for him. Don't buy into that bullshit rhetoric if you're following any of that advice out there. Your value lies within. And you have a tremendous amount of power within you to be in relationship. One of the first things you must do, and I say must, is establish your standards and your boundaries. And more importantly, your capacity to speak your truth to a guy, because in many cases, many of you don't speak up because you're fearful that he will leave the relationship. Who gives a fuck if he leaves the relationship? If he can't meet your standards, or if he continually crosses boundaries, if he gaslights you, if he treats you with disrespect, if he ignores you. Don't settle for mediocrity. Stand in your power because you're a victor and not a victim in this experience. Because if you really want to experience that juicy, delicious relationship I talk about, folks, let me just say this. Most men are good guys. They just don't know how to get to what I'm about to share. And you can make it happen incredibly easy. And what's going to make both of you fall in love with each other is the capacity to experience emotional intimacy with one another. Not physical intimacy, not the physical high that comes from intercourse. I'm talking about that emotional high that comes from being vulnerable, by being authentic, and by being transparent with one another. And if you're not familiar with the book, Emotional Intimacy by Robert Masters, I highly recommend checking this out and reading this book so you can understand the fundamentals and the principles to get to that level of emotional intimacy with your partner. Because, folks, let me just say this. What's the point of being in a relationship? Listen, if you can pay your own bills and support yourself, then you don't need a man for dependency. Maybe you might need some companionship. Maybe you might need some connection. Maybe you might want some sex. Sure, casual relationships can offer that experience. But a deeply committed relationship, if you really want to experience that, then it's going to require someone in the relationship to lead the emotional capacity of that relationship. This is one of the reasons why, listen, you may not want to be married again or get married, but you might want to read this book, The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work, so you can understand the mechanics to a healthy, happy relationship. And more importantly, to really, by the way, let me just say this. I am getting email after email after email from women saying, Jonathan, thank you so much for suggesting that I read these books with the person I'm in relationship with. You know, most of you know my rhetoric. Before the penis goes inside the vagina, you should be reading the book 8 Dates by Doctors John and Julie Gottman. This is a great setup. At least chapter 1, read it together so you can actually set yourself up for success instead of, it's interesting. I was listening to a dating coach today. Their philosophy is simply spend 6 weeks with a guy to determine if he's a fit for you. And if he's not a fit, if he's not boyfriend material, move on. Well, 6 weeks is a lot of time to invest your heart to someone only to have that person, ghost, disappear, move on. It's not a fit. And if you do this over and over and over again, let me tell you what happens. Dating triggers the number one emotional health issue we are facing today. And that is, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, and I'm not likable. I'm here to encourage that you take charge of your life by being more proactive, by being intentional. That doesn't mean you have to do this on the first date per se, but why not on the telephone? Do what the Indian matchmaker does and vet this person so that if you are a fit from an attraction perspective, you have a greater chance for success. And ultimately, for that deep, juicy, delicious love to happen, emotional intimacy must become the foundation of the relationship so you can actually lean into something that I experienced this weekend with these other couples is 4 men deeply in love with their partners. And I can tell you that I can't imagine these relationships will ever suffer like many of us have suffered in the past. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating with you? Please let me know. Please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel. All right, I think this would be a great place to start our Q&A for the evening. Those of you know my format, if you have a question to ask me, if you're following on the live stream right now, or if you're listening to the recording. Well, actually, you can only do this if you're on the live stream. If you have a question, write the word question, post the question thereafter, or purchase a super sticker, super chat. There's a little $sign in the chat box. And if you're watching the replay, there's a super thanks. All of the monies from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Asley. That's him right there. That's my son who passed away a few years ago. And in his honor, I donate to causes like the Hoffman Process and Insight seminars, just to name a few. And we've given out, I think in the last year, over $3,500 from all your $1, $2, $5 super stickers. So thank you so much for that. All right, let's start with Q&A. If you have a question, post the question, and we're going to jump in today. Let's see. Cece said, are there any books on pouring aside from the attachment style book? I'm not familiar with the term pouring, but I will definitely say that the book Attached by, where is the book Attached? Oh, where did I put the book? Oh, I got to find it somewhere. I must have the book somewhere out, but I'm not familiar with that. So thank you so much for. Can you elaborate on that so I can get a chance to understand it better? Thank you so much. All right, let's see. Bump, 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 bump. Jane says, misogynistic. Amen, Jonathan. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Alexis says, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. If you have a question, there we go. Question. Jonathan, we give men who don't deserve it too much credit for the things they haven't earned. I don't understand the question, but I will agree that women oftentimes give credit to men who don't deserve it. That's absolutely true. Where's that book Attached, by the way? I'm looking for it. Oh, it's on my desk over there. I was reading it earlier. Again, if you have a question, write. Oh, here we go. Let's see. If you have a question, write the word question and then post the question thereafter. It makes it easier for me to find or purchase a super sticker, super chat. Okay. Let's see. Cecilia says, I have a great relationship now, but shouldn't I try to understand why in ghosting involves the addictive compulsive pouring like emails almost every day. I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, because I'm not familiar with that term. I mean, new terms come out every day. Oops. New terms come out every day. Listen, when a man feels a connection, and a sexual desire for a person, they might want that person, and yet at the same time, they may not be capable of true commitment. If a man isn't capable of commitment, but he wants that companionship, connection, and sex, he might pour a lot of affection, a lot of attention to a person, and then pull back because he doesn't want to create a situation where she believes there's something greater to the relationship than what's currently being offered at that time. So it's not uncommon that men come on, pull back, come on, pull back, come on, pull back, because quite frankly, they haven't made up in their mind that they want commitment. Ladies, this is why, again, read the book, the first chapter of the book, 8 Dates, about trust and commitment, before that penis ever gets to go inside that vagina. Because let me tell you something, I'm sorry to break it down this way, but on some level, your power lies in the sense that a man really, if he's only seeking sex with you and you hold off the sexual piece, that power you have not to give into the sex and not give into the physical aspect of the relationship, most guys will disappear rather quickly. So the power you have is to hold off, that power within you to hold off falling into the sexual piece to determine if he's a legit guy. Ladies, it takes about 100 hours of face-to-face time just to build the first layer of trust in a relationship. The first layer of trust. Now, I'm not saying you have to wait 100 hours to have sex, but I'm saying most guys disappear in a very short period of time. And by the way, today's dating is so predicated on spending a little time here, a little time there, and a lot of time on your telephone. A lot of it spent on text messaging and telephone calls, and very little face-to-face time. And trust is built through social activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends, traveling together, teamwork, building skills, both in your personal and professional life. That is where deep intimacy is built. And if you want that kind of love that I talked about in the beginning of this broadcast, then it's going to require emotional intimacy to get there. And emotional intimacy is not built over the telephone. Is this sinking in? Please let me know. All right, let's keep going here. Let's keep going. Question. Here we go. Bianca. Question. It is when men don't understand what they should have, it is not the right time yet in a relationship. It is. I don't, folks, if you're going to ask me a question, don't make a statement. I can't respond to a statement. I can respond to a statement, but if you have a question, post it in the form of a question. That helps me a lot easier to determine what you're trying to accomplish here. So again, post a question there. Here's Lindy says, question, how do I unattach from a man who's a spender and I want more? Has anyone ever seen listened to the Ariana Grande song Next? Listen, folks, I don't understand why detaching from someone is so difficult. You literally send a message saying, thank you for your time. I'm moving on to another relationship. Now, that's not easy when we are attached to a person. Yes, I get that. When we're chemically attached, when we're emotionally attached. This is why read the book Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, so you can understand attachment styles. But the best way is cold turkey. When I say the best way, that's the hardest way, but it's still the best way. Block the person, end the relationship, move on, block the person. And it's sometimes as simple as the hardest thing to do is to just say no and move on. That's my invitation for you anyway. Pixie says, About a month ago, I donated your book after I read it to a lending library. And last night on my walk, I came across another lending library and found the book, If the Buddha Dated. A great book is If the Buddha Dated. I highly recommend that book, everyone, right here. If the Buddha Dated. By the way, all the books I recommend are in the description of this video below. So definitely check that out. Hey, Cecilia, I want to thank you for the $20 super sticker. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Oh, you go on to say you're an amazing person. Jonathan, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, Jade writes, question. First of all, thank you, J.A. I really appreciate your lives. How to straddle the thin line between not falling in love into the sexual piece without pushing away a guy so much he may look otherwise. How to straddle the thin line of not falling into the sexual piece. You know, I think sometimes keeping yourself in environments where it doesn't lend you to becoming physical with a guy. So maybe not too much alcohol when going out on a date. Definitely don't go back to his hotel room or go back to his home if you've gone to a date. Or when I say go back to his hotel room or going to a hotel room. Finding yourself in more daytime casual experiences has a less likelihood of finding yourself in sexual situations when you meet in the daytime. Sometimes I used to have breakfast dates. I loved breakfast dates, meeting someone at the beach and having breakfast dates. So those are just a couple examples of what you could do. But Jade, thank you so much for that question. And thank you for saying he's amazing. I really appreciate it. All right, looks like we have a bashful group tonight. So if we don't have too many questions, we're going to wrap up rather early this evening. Again, if you have a question for me, write the word question and post the question thereafter. We'll give it a second. Oh, if you have anything to want to ask about my sweetheart and I, more than welcome. I'm more than happy to share a bit about our relationship to the group. So if you have a personal question to ask for me, write that as well, a personal question. Okay, looks like Bianca has another question. Jonathan, sorry about that, Jonathan. Why do men feel they can lead the relationship when he is rushing things in the beginning, even if it's not sexual? Well, men have been traditionally conditioned to lead the relationship. So it's not like we have been, so that's following programming. Also, men tend to be the provider protectors in a relationship. So the financial like ladies can ask men out on dates, pay for dates. Women can take the initiative all they want. It only turns off a weak pussy guy is turned off by a woman who takes the initiative. A man with a tiny penis is the one who gets offended by a woman who takes the initiative. If it offends some man's masculinity because a woman says, hey, I'd like to take you out on a date because I think you're an interesting guy. This guy's got the tiny little penis the size of his pinky. Don't get so upset. I would never get all bent out of shape or twisted for some guy because you took the initiative. That's my invitation for anyway. Thank you so much for that one. I really appreciate it. Okay. Let's see. Pixie Dust says, question. I'm waiting until I get my physical self to a healthier state before I begin dating again. My opinion is that if a guy is interested in me while I'm unhealthy, it would be a red flag. Is it? Well, if it depends on what unhealthy means. Are we talking about physical health? In other words, particularly related to weight? Or are we talking about maybe a heart condition, maybe a female condition, something like that? And certainly there are men who are out there that are more caretaker type personalities. But I think every man appreciates a healthy woman. Certainly men who have a severe caretaker personality might want damaged women. That's certainly a possibility. But those men tend to be the exception and not the rule. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. All right. So I think that's a great question. And listen, my philosophy is get busy living or get busy dying. Lean into love. The sooner you better you can. All right. Deborah writes, question. Why is he silent after I said I'll come see you this weekend? because he genuinely is not capable of a serious relationship, most likely. And because of that, the minute you make effort, it scares him. He's a pussy. Do you really want to be with a man who's a pussy? I'm sorry, I'm using that term. It might offend some people. He's a wimp. He's a simp. He's a weak man. If he gets offended because you want to spend time with him, unless he has a legitimate reason to not, I mean, if he has a legitimate reason why he's not capable of seeing you, that's one thing. If he gets scared out of fear in relationship, don't, ladies. I was in this group, this men's group. I saw 3 other men who are absolutely leaning into partnership, leaning into commitment, leaning into love, being vulnerable, being authentic, being transparent. These are men whose actions match their words. They have victor consciousness, not victim consciousness. They know how to, what I call, fight fair, meaning they know how to listen to their partner's point of view, that acknowledge their partner's point of view, and accept that partner's point of view as being true for them. They have empathy, and empathy isn't just I can feel your feelings. Empathy is I genuinely care about your best interest in your feelings. And more importantly, you care about your own feelings. And lastly, these men have transparency in their life. If they are not ready for serious commitment, they're upfront about it. Those are the men worth investing time. And if you need some help finding those guys, schedule a discovery call with me. There's a link below in the description. Deborah, thank you so much for that question. All right. Tiger, I don't see your question. If you have a question, can you write the word question and post the question thereafter, or purchase a super sticker, super chat? It'll make it easier for me to find. I have not seen your question. Okay, let's see here. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Dee Dee, who cheats more, men or women? Well, from what I understand is women now are right up there with men on the physical cheating. Women tend to have more emotional sex with men, and men tend to have more physical sex with women. But I think women are now right up there or close to, the numbers are the relatively close to one another. At least that's what I've heard. All right. Cecilia says, question, in your relationship, is there a book you love going to that is not for daters? I like saving your marriage before it starts. Well, my girl, you know what? I think if you were talking about my relationship, my girlfriend introduced me to this book, Making Your Second Marriage a First-Class Success. This is a fascinating book. I'm really enjoying reading this. So, folks, I highly, for those of us in midlife, that's after baby making years and before retirement, roughly 75% of us are divorced. I highly recommend checking out this book as the mechanics to building a healthy, happy relationship with a partner. So my girlfriend turned me on to that book. So thank you so much. Let's see. Question. Does Jonathan have an opinion on long distance relation for those who have met? Okay. Well, folks, most of you know that my sweetheart, there's a picture of her right there. We met on a dating site. She emailed me first. She lived in Chicago at the time. And she said she grew up in Los Angeles and she has family here. And so we engaged in a conversation, but I didn't take it too seriously because she lived far away. So we, exchanged phone numbers, we exchanged Facebook page, information. We kept in touch for about a year, because of COVID, sometimes I think we reached out to each other because we were lonely and wanted some attention, but she lived too far away for me to consider it. Now, she came to Los Angeles twice, and like a dick, I blew her off both times. I was going through my own shit at the time, each time she came to visit. So it turns out that we began our relationship when I went out to Chicago to officiate a wedding. And we met while I was there, and we saw each other 2 separate times. The first night I flew in, and then she joined me at the wedding. And then a few weeks later, she flew out to Los Angeles to spend some time with her daughter and her son and a few other friends because she grew up here. And then we got together for 4 days. And in these 4 days, I had a magical experience with this person. And it wasn't just because of the physical component of it. I really began appreciating who this person was, or is, I should say. And we decided that we would commit to exploring a relationship together and what that would look like. So we had a game plan of how we would travel back and forth to one another, and more importantly, how we would take this distance from long to short. And actually, we rather quickly, because our first time she came to visit me, we spent 4 days. The next time she spent 12 days. The next time she spent 18 days, which included a trip to Mexico. I went to visit her for 4 or 5 days. I visited her for 3 weeks. And then we actually chose to move in together. And she moved up. She loaded up the truck and moved to Beverly, so to speak. We actually now live together, and this is all within 6 months of physically meeting each other. However, we knew each other for over a year, so it didn't feel like we were total strangers. It's interesting. I'm watching a lot of reality TV. One in particular is Love is Blind, as well as Married at First Sight. And one of the interesting facets is that these couples are joining together rather quickly and living together in these dynamics. And why I'm bringing this up is the reality is, folks, is you don't really get to know someone until you live with them. And when I think of the 3 other couples that were at the workshop, 2 of them, they moved in with their partners less than 6 months of knowing them. I think you really don't get to know another human being until you live with them. And interesting enough, we've gotten through our first month, her and I. We're learning our little bit of our differences. Thankfully, we have agreeable personalities, but more importantly, we are fully committed to making this work. So in a long distance relationship, I'm here to say, if 2 people aren't committed to the idea of living together or some sort of partnership, fully committed to it right from the get-go, it's rather problematic. And it requires a lot of magic fairy dust to hope that it might work out. And that's my opinion on that. So thank you so much for that question. I really appreciate it. All right. Let's see. Let's go swim. And here's Anita. Question. After 12 years, got dumped for a bartender at a bar. He's going to be 30 years old. Her husband was a patron and died 10 years ago. Now he's been crying on her shoulder and said he fell in love with her. And then the follow-up is 5 months honeymoon, how to handle. This is too complicated of a question. When you say how to handle, handle yourself, handle your emotions, I would do a deep dive into self-love is how I would handle it. That's my recommendation. All right. Oh, Tiger, finally your question. Jonathan, do you think I should text a man I've been with for 7 years? He pays my whole life and provider man. I called him a loser in the morning because he didn't want to give me my allowance. How would you feel if he called you a loser? How would that feel? Of course, you should want to apologize. And to apologize, first off, let me get the book. Okay, I'm going to get the book, Chatting or Cheating. This is written by my dear friend, Dr. Sherry Myers. Actually, she was one of the couples at the workshop. I want to go to apology. Where is apology? How to give an apology. I want to read this to you all because this is critically important. If you're going to apologize, apology. Where's apology? Here we go, page 103 and 101 and 103. Bear with me, everyone. The 4 R's to an apology. I'm going to read them to you. Recognize and acknowledge the pain you have caused. Express regret and remorse about what you've done and the pain it caused. Take responsibility for your actions and express your desire to reconcile, remedy, and make restitution. Those are the 4 R's to an apology. That would be my recommendation to you based on what you shared. I think it's not cool to call someone a loser. If they've been a provider in your life. And so that would be my recommendation. Good luck with that, Tiger. I hope it works out. Jade says officiate. Yes, that was cool. I officiated the wedding and my girlfriend showed up at the wedding. So that was cool. Um, Cecilia says, wow, that's a great answer. Thank you so much. Hey, I want to thank Lenny for the $7.99 super sticker. Big hugs. Linda says, how do you and your fiance, how do you handle finances with your beloved? Well, it's kind of interesting because we, we have some friends who live in the complex next door to us, and they split they moved in together after 6 months, and they split everything 50-50. And in our dynamic, I happen to be the one who's the greater breadwinner. And to make this work for both of us, I agreed to take on more of the financial responsibility. But what's interesting is we both come to the table with a fair amount of assets in our lives, because we are, getting close to being senior citizens. And she's retired. So we just take turns on things, like we don't even think about it. Like sometimes, no, it's, like she just, puts her credit card in the slot and when we're buying groceries, or I take care of something else. And when it's travel, we kind of, we take care of our share, so to speak. And sometimes if I want first class tickets or something like that, I cover the difference. I believe we trust each other enough, and we respect each other enough, and we know where each other's coming from, that we both view it as a partnership. And it's like, I mean, yes, we thought about putting all the money in the pot and then drawing from the pot, but these days it's just like, she'll take care of some things, I take care of some things. I tend to take care of more of it, but she's an absolute contributor. I love that. Like we actually went to the store last night, and she pulled out her credit card and put it in the machine at the grocery store. And, we don't get into pissing matches over that. That's because we did have serious conversations about money. And I will tell you, one of the chapters in the book, 8 Dates, you should definitely read. Chapter 2, chapter 4, right there. Chapter 4, The Cost of Love, Work and Money. We basically followed the script from this book as the template for our relationship, and we talked about this. So now it's like not even a big deal, and I don't even think we've ever had a fight about money, because we come at it from a place of mutual generosity. I love how we don't get into this. Is why, coming back to the book, where did I put it? If the Buddha Dated. What I love about the book of the Buddha Dated, it throws out the bullshit gender rhetoric of how things were in the past. And it says, how can we generate a relationship from a heart-centered place? I highly recommend reading this book for yourself, because I'm here to suggest throwing out the bullshit gender expectations and say, how can we show up as grown-ups? This is why, folks, if you're not familiar with my dating vow, here's a copy of it. I by the way, this is something my girlfriend and I did before we agreed to a fully committed relationship. We agreed to the dating vows, and it says, I agree to explore the process of each person says this to each other. I agree to explore the process of getting to know you with the intent to declare something serious within the next 3 to 6 months. I agree to be monogamous sexually while we have regular sex together. I agree not to actively seek and date others while we're in the dating process, include taking down our dating profiles. I agree to speak up if something isn't working versus pulling back, ghosting, or disappearing. And lastly, I agree to invest regular time in the process to getting to know you, which looks like spending 3 or 4 days and nights a week together, doing shared activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends, traveling together, teamwork, building skills both in our personal and professional life, intimacy, both physical and emotional intimacy, and that leads to either moving in together or getting married. Folks, before you have regular sex with a guy, get on the same page of what you want. But Jonathan, that's going to scare men away. Yeah, 90% of guys will get scared by this because those guys aren't ready for a fully committed relationship, or they're not capable of it, or they're not serious about it. So do you want to spend time with the wrong guys or weed out the men? Folks, I want you to invite in a beautiful relationship in your life as if it has already happened. God, universe, spirit, I'm in a juicy, delicious relationship where we have amazing chemistry with one another. And our communication is off the charts, and we can banter together for hours and hours at a time because we communicate with each other like we're best friends with one another. And our lifestyles are in a capacity to blend with one another, and we share the same values, which builds the deep roots of trust. God, universe, spirit, I'm experiencing this right now. Build it and they will come. Okay, I did one of my rabbit squirrels there, so thank you so much. Thank you for that question, Linda. I appreciate it. Question: when a man constantly talks about his ex, does that mean he is not healed? Yeah. People that ramble on about their past relationships, going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Yeah, they have residue. Now, some people that isn't going to completely block them, but believe me, who the fuck wants to hear about their past relationships over and over and over again? It gets boring, but it gets exhausting. It gets exhausting. So choose people that have healed or at least are healing from their past relationships. Thank you so much for that question, Lenny. I appreciate it. Stephanie says, nice blazer. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Oh, Pixie Dust says, I moved in with my ex 2 weeks after our first date. LOL. Even though he's my ex, we're still extremely close. No regrets. See, you don't get to know a person until you actually live with them. Okay. Oh, Tiger now says he ignored you for 3 weeks. Well, that sucks. And you said thank you for reading us. You're very welcome. Listen, you had an opportunity to send a heartfelt message of how you felt over his dismissal for you. By calling him a loser, you matched his energy. I would then now lead by example and give some sort of apology to open the door to having a conversation. That's my invitation. But someone who disappears for 3 weeks, oftentimes they're just not that into you enough to be a respectful human being in relationship. They're not into you enough to treat you with respect as another human being. At least that's my perception. Debbie says that's exactly how it should be. Respectful. Exactly. Thank you. Hey, Amy, thank you for the $1.99 super sticker. Thank Connor Asley. Thank you so much. Marianne says, question. Is there anything that you've learned about yourself through the process of getting to know your new girlfriend and now moving in with her you might have realized before? That's a really great question. In fact, I had a situation happen last week. So I'm noticing I've always known this, but I have high anxiety when problems arise. Now, I am a basket case, and which is probably not very masculine out there. Thankfully, my girlfriend has a capacity to handle crisis with a lot more ease and comfort. So when I'm in my anxiety, it's usually because a problem can't be solved. And if a problem can't be solved, I feel out of control. This is because my father, this is a pattern that happened in my life because my father would go out of control when there was a problem. And I grew up with immigrant parents who weren't familiar with United States culture. So it was very problematic for my father, and that bled on to me. What I'm also noticing is I take it out on her a little bit and I feel like shit. And sometimes I don't realize it in the moment. And so we had a conversation about this right before the workshop. I said, honey, you've noticed that I have a capacity to go in anxiety, and I appreciate your strength in being able to hold space. What you'll most likely notice is that I will probably apologize within 10 minutes or an hour of when I act like a pure jackass. And I'm working on doing a better job at this. And I appreciate that you hold that space of strength when I'm going completely but just schizophrenic in that moment. So yes, I believe relationships are also part of our healing process And one of the things I appreciated most that happened this weekend was, that makes me cry now. She said maybe for the first time in her life, she feels safe with someone. And that melts my heart, because I hope I show up as a strong partner to her, because she shows up as such a beautiful, loving, compassionate partner towards me. And when a man cries, as I started this broadcast out, when he's experiencing emotional intimacy, crying is just a melting of the heart. And so it's that man's capacity to put someone as a priority, to be able to be vulnerable, authentic, and transparent. And more importantly, when two people can find that emotional intimacy one another, you'll find yourself and him falling deeply in love with each other. All right, I think this will be a good place to wrap up this content today. First off, folks, I want to thank you so much for the comments. I really appreciate it. If you found value in this video, please hit the like button. Please share this with your friends. Please subscribe to my channel. In the description below, you can schedule a discovery call with me. You can purchase the books, join me on Instagram, or join my membership group called Midlife Love Mastery. All right. I'm going to wrap up this video as I always do. First off, give myself a big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug of self-love. I'm going to reach into the camera and give you a hug of love if that's okay. I'm going to ask you to turn to someone, a pet, teddy bear, a pillow, and give it or them a hug of love, because hugs are a great source of love. And let's face it, we could all use more love in our lives. I want to thank, who are we going to, oh my God, so much. Amy and Valerie and Envy and Cecilia and Pixie Dust. And Pamela and Bianca and Elena, Corny Cobb, Ladera, Bianca, everyone. Thank you, Jane. Thank Maya. Thank you all so much. Wishing you a fab evening. Be well. Bye now. And my girlfriend did not pick out my